are. It's episode 3 of SimBoxx Presents Let's Talk Boxing. And what a fight we have to break down. It's, of course, the huge rematch between undefeated WBC heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder versus the Gypsy King, himself undefeated, none other than Tyson Fury. It was an amazing, dramatic first fight. And tonight we're going to break down how we see this rematch going February 22nd.
Yeah, really exciting. We finished off the year last year with a massive heavyweight action out in Saudi with AJ and Ruiz, and then we're back for more heavyweights with Wilder and Fury. It's a really exciting one, and after a quiet start to the year, it's great to have something to sink our teeth into.
Definitely, it's often a used cliche amongst boxing fans and pundits and anyone that knows boxing that there's nothing quite like heavyweight boxing. The land of the giants, the big punchers, the big men. It just brings excitement. It epitomizes everything that we love about boxing. And this fight brings everything. You got the huge puncher, arguably the biggest puncher in heavyweight boxing history in Deontay Wilder, and the matador in Tyson Fury. A supremely skilled fighter. Often, it's stated that he shouldn't move the way he does for a heavyweight. And it's such an intriguing bout with so many different possible outcomes. And I can't wait to break it down with you tonight. I'm really excited to discuss the fight and to get your thoughts and put my own thoughts out there on behalf of SimBoxx. Really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And you couldn't make it up. They're called Fury and Wilder, for heaven's sake. You could, it's the stuff of a fairy tale. The charismatic entertainer in Fury and the devastating puncher in Wilder, the British versus the American, the Gypsy King and the Bronze Bomber. You couldn't write it.
Yeah, it literally has everything you'd need. Like you say, even down to the names, it epitomizes everything that's great about this fight. The first fight, of course, was very dramatic. It left a lot of questions unanswered. And I think that's the biggest thing that I'm looking to get from February 22nd is a definitive answer. There's a lot of rumours about a third fight possibly happening. I think if we get a conclusive end to this fight, that goes out the window. But obviously we'll discuss that in further depth further down the episode. But yeah, it's just a great fight, and it's one of the reasons why I love boxing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like a heavyweight title fight, and what a heavyweight title fight it was when they first clashed. It was absolutely epic. Like you say, it was the box from the puncher, and it couldn't have been more clearly that dynamic. You know what I mean? Tyson Fury was moving laterally, and he started off in that first round just bobbing and moving, and looked like he'd never been away when actually he'd been out of the ring for 3.5 years.
Certainly, and that's the first part I'd like to get into. Let's look back. It was December 1st, 2018. Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder for the WBC Heavyweight Championship of the World. Tyson Fury coming in after, like you say, 3 years out of the ring. He had those two subpar opponents as warm-up bouts. I think he was entitled to that after such a lengthy period out. He defeated Stefan Safira and Francisco Pianeta. And of course that led on to the Deontay Wilder fight being announced, and I think it took everyone by surprise. How did you see it at the time when you first heard the whispers of a possible Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury fight?
I genuinely didn't believe it. I've always been a Fury fan, but I thought there's absolutely no way he'll take it on such, he's literally Stefan Safiri and Francesco Pianeta. They're not names. They're not good fights. They're, glorified sparring sessions for Tyson Fury. He hadn't had a proper fight before he fought Wilder. He was still losing the weight. He was still not right. I was baffled that he'd taken, arguably the most dangerous fight out there. You know what I mean? He'd gone straight for one of the two champions that he could have gone for. I thought he'd have at least one fight against a contender before he got back in there, but no, he's gone straight for it, and I was impressed, but I was almost in disbelief at the idea that he would go still losing weight and take on somebody as dangerous as Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, I certainly second that. I think it goes to show the utter self-belief of Tyson Fury, the drive, the determination, and certainly, like I said, the self-belief that he could envisage and have the confidence of beating Deontay Wilder. And Deontay Wilder, for all his naysayers and his doubters, he's always done what it says on the tin. He's a knockout artist, and he'd knocked everybody out, and he'd never really looked like he'd struggled doing it. So there was no apparent chink in the armour where Tyson Fury would have thought, in the condition that he was in back then, that he was 100% confident that he was going to get the victory, and that amazed me. I think I echo your thoughts there, where you say, it was almost like a disbelief that one, it was going to happen, and two, that Tyson Fury was 100% confident he was going to get the victory.
Yeah, famously, even Muhammad Ali, when he came back after 3 years out of the ring, he had, he's the greatest, and he had 2 fights against legitimate contenders in Jerry Quarry and Oscar Bonavena, and he eased his way back in before he took on Frazier, and it was absolute madness that he didn't even attempt to do that. He just went, right, give me the biggest name, and that's who he went for.
Yep. So across the ring, we had Deontay Wilder, undefeated, knocked out everybody he'd ever fought. Of course, he had the points decision win to claim the title against Bermane Stiverne, but of course he knocked him out devastatingly in the rematch. And coming into the fight with Tyson Fury, he'd made 7 consecutive successful defenses of his WBC heavyweight title. And the fight beforehand, leading into the Fury fight, was of course the dramatic fight in itself with Luis Ortiz won. I think that was the most trouble I'd ever seen Deontay Wilder in by far in the Ortiz fight. Ortiz gave him all kinds of hell in those middle rounds before Deontay Wilder came through with a 10th round knockout. So I think that's something as well that we don't often realise, is that he came off the back of the Luis Ortiz fight coming into Tyson Fury 1, and now he's coming off a Luis Ortiz victory coming into the Tyson Fury rematch as well. But that first Luis Ortiz fight was an unbelievable victory, and it was almost like a gut check for the first time for Deontay Wilder. And he was riding a real high of confidence on the back of that.
Absolutely, but at the same time, you have to see on both occasions the Luis Ortiz fight, he struggled when Luis Ortiz went to his boxing. Obviously he's got a good Cuban amateur pedigree, and when he boxed, he gave Deontay Wilder real problems, and you have to think that is where Fury draws some of the confidence from, is that nobody's a better boxer than him in the heavyweight division, or so he would have us everyone believe. And it was the most pure boxer that Wilder's fought that has given him the most problems. I think that must be, you're saying Wilder's got a perfect record, and he absolutely has. But it must be that thing that starts the Fury train going, I can beat this guy. Yeah,
certainly. You'd like to think that he'd clearly seen something. He's got a much better boxing IQ and a boxing brain than you and I, and majority of people in boxing for that matter. He's clearly going to see things that the average human eye is not going to see. And who are we to question him? Look at the performance he put on, which is obviously something we're going to break down now. So, looking at the fight, I think the first thing that I was shocked by, or surprised by, was when the first bell went, and within the first minute, Wilder was windmilling away. He'd missed a couple of huge right hands, and it wasn't even like a feeling out process. He went straight in with the usual, unorthodox looking, wild overhand right, and it missed by a country mile. And then we had Tyson Fury in response, ever the showman, ever the entertainer with his hands behind his back, and this all took place within the first 60 to 70 seconds, and it epitomises how the whole fight would go on to play out.
Yeah, absolutely. Wilder came straight away, thought, I'm going to find a home for this right hand, and then I'll have it done in a couple of rounds, and he just couldn't find it. He couldn't penetrate the distance that Fury's jab and Fury's feints were laying out. He's such a tall, such a rangy man at 6'9", and when he feints, you have to respect that. And Wilder could not penetrate the distance. He couldn't cover the distance, and that was evident within the first couple of rounds that Wilder was struggling to get inside. So his only method of offense was to leap forward with that windmilling right hand. And somebody with the boxing brain of Fury, like we said, is never going to get hit with those. If you jump from 6 foot away from him, you're always going to, he's always going to pick up on that and see it coming. It's, in those first 4 or 5 rounds, that was my main takeaway, is Fury maintaining that distance, and Wilder not being able to get inside. He really, really struggled to move his feet close enough to Fury to find a home for that right hand in a way that he normally does.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's often, he's often ridiculed for his seemingly lack of boxing ability, and that he's just a one-trick pony. My answer to that, I obviously say that, if your one trick's that good, then you don't need anything else. But I do think he's a better boxer than he's given credit for. But then I'm going to kind of take away from that in the fact that in the Tyson Fury fight, he neglected what boxing skill he does have in the hope of just landing the haymaker, the highlight reel knockout. He clearly, and especially early, like you say, underrated the conditioning of Tyson Fury. He underestimated the defensive ability of Tyson Fury, the head movement, the footwork, the feints. Totally threw him off his game. And like I say, I do believe he's a better boxer than he's given credit for, but then he did neglect that. So there was no jab to set up the big right hand. You know, it was almost like he was just touching it out just to try and find some sort of distance. And then when he did let the right hand go, it was miles off, and it was each and every time. It wasn't like it was getting closer and he was building up to something. Tyson Fury just had him bamboozled from the start, and you know, we'll get onto the second half of the fight. But in the first 6 rounds, Tyson Fury, I wouldn't say it was easy, but he was comfortable, and he was winning the fight handedly.
Absolutely, he was doing what he did to Klitschko, which was baffling him. He says it was there with his hands behind his back, and you still can't hit him. And that is because he only does those things when he knows he's safe. He only showboats when he's at distance. When he got caught with the shots that he has got caught with, it's when he's really engaging. It's when he's active. He's never got caught showboating because he knows when to showboat. And I think that's what he was doing in those first rounds. And it was really psychologically affecting Wilder in terms of he was showboating. But he was also, when Wilder did try and come in, he'd throw that double front foot feint where he kind of shakes his shoulders and then puts a jab on the end. Or sometimes he throws the jab straight away. But sometimes he puts it in on the second beat, and he was upsetting Wilder's rhythm. Yeah. Wilder relies on a rhythm of, he's going to step there, I'm going to step here, bang, there's the right hand. But Fury would double jitter step backwards, step right, then he'd switch stances, and then he'd back out. And he just had this unorthodox rhythm of, you know, they were playing different tunes, and it's the same thing he did to Klitschko. Klitschko relied on, he steps there, left up, right hand, and Wilder's the same way. It's jab, big right hand over the top. And Fury was just not dancing to his tune. He was just playing a different song entirely. And I think that was the story of, like you say, of those first 6 rounds.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think it's often an overused term when we see like a one-sided fight or a fight at the wrong time. But I think it was true in this instance that it was a cherry pick by Deontay Wilder. He felt like he was getting Tyson Fury at exactly the right time. And I think his early game plan, or lack of game plan, was evident of that, you know, he didn't have a plan B. He didn't want to counteract anything that Fury might have posed in terms of problems. You know, he didn't, like say, Fury was switching stances and the feints and everything else, and Wilder still came forward, still dangled out some sort of left jab, you know, just to set up that big right hand. He didn't try anything different. You know, whether or not he was struggling with the fact that he was the smaller man maybe for the first time in his career, you know, less reach than Tyson Fury, and he couldn't gauge his distance. You know, I think it was a whole load of lack of, I wouldn't like to say lack of preparing, because, you know, he's WBC heavyweight champion of the world. You know, we're not talking about a small hall show or a journeyman. You know, it's the top of the sport. But it did look kind of amateurish.
Absolutely, but that's what Tyson Fury can do to people, and I don't think that's like I say, I agree with you that I think Deontay Wilder has underrated boxing skills, but I think Tyson Fury can do it. Vladimir Klitschko reigned for 10 years. Tyson Fury did it to him, and he made him look like he didn't know what to do in a boxing ring. And if anyone knows what to do in a boxing ring, it's Vladimir Klitschko. But Tyson Fury made him look big because he's not playing the same game as everybody else. Deontay Wilder plays a certain game with his opponents, with the Bermane Steverns and the Gerald Washingtons of this world. But Tyson Fury was not playing the same game. They weren't doing the same things. He wasn't doing anything that any of his opponents have ever done before. And that's something that Wilder's benefited from in his career, because he does things differently. But Fury does them even differently to how Wilder thinks. And it was so different in that he doesn't throw the feints, and he showboats from the off, and he relaxes into the fight in a way that most people, you know, if you're in a world heavyweight title fight, you're stiff, you've got your gloves up high. Tyson Fury just didn't do any of that. He just breezed in like it was, you know, an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. Do you know what I mean? And I think that really shook Wilder in terms of the way he had to approach the fight. He had to rethink his entrances, the way he got in on Tyson Fury, the way he got past that jab. And that's something he's never really had to do in a fight before, because every one of his opponents has done similar things, whereas Tyson Fury was just not playing the same game.
Yeah, certainly. So as the fight moved into the 9th round, you know, the action really started to pick up in terms of, you know, both men were visibly slowing. You know, I think that was something that surprised me with Deontay Wilder, is given his athletic background, his athletic appearance. If you look at the two guys on the night as physical specimen. You would certainly think Tyson Fury had gas earlier than Deontay Wilder, but that wasn't the case. Entering the championship rounds, if you like, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th round, Tyson Fury was still bobbing and weaving and feiting. Obviously not the same output as what he had in the first 3 rounds, but certainly more than what Deontay Wilder was offering. But he was caught, of course. He's dropped in the 9th round. Didn't look like any sort of heavy shot was landed, but enough to put him over. I think there was one round the back of the ear, and it knocks the equilibrium, and over he went. What was your thoughts at that point of the fight, Ewan?
I almost thought it is a knockdown, but watching it on the night, I was almost not sure if it was a push. It seemed that Fury had managed to get himself off balance, and he did get caught with a little cuffing shot in there. But it almost seemed bizarre because he almost kind of fell over of his own accord, and he was there like laughing and joking on the floor, and he famously does the kind of the Billy Joe Saunders looking up at Jack Reese thing, and then he stands up, and it was kind of a little bit bizarre, and especially when he was winning that round and winning it quite convincingly, and then he kind of just gets himself back into the corner. But yeah, I think it was the weight, and he wasn't moving his feet, and as soon as he stopped still, that's how powerful Wilder is, because as soon as Fury planted his feet for 1 second, then Fury ended up on his back. But like I say, my overriding memory of it is not that Wilder had knocked him down and had hurt him and was gonna, end the fight here. It was that, Fury just switched off for a second there, and he's gone, I'm on the floor, get back up and start again, because he then went on to win the rest of that round. And obviously on the scorecards, that's a 10-8 for Wilder. But if you select any 10 seconds from the fight, from that round, any 10 seconds from that round, if it's not the 10 seconds where Wilder knocks Fury down, then you'd say Fury's in charge, Fury's winning. And it's a bizarre one, because I was kind of, I didn't fear for him then when he got knocked down on that knockdown. I thought, what's he doing? He's just switching off. Why has he ended up getting knocked down? I was more confused than, like I say, it almost looked, in the heat of everything, when you're watching it with a lot of people and when you're really into it, almost looked like a push. It wasn't a classic Deontay Wilder bang right hand sleep knockout. Do you know what I mean? Knocked down even.
Yeah, I'm certainly inclined to agree with you on a few of those points. I think the one person that wouldn't agree with you on that point was Deontay Wilder, because when Fury does hit the canvas, Wilder switches. He believes that he's got his man hurt, and he's just going to end this fight like he ended the other 39 opponents. He felt like he'd landed once, he's going to land again. And you see him, if you watch the fight back, as Fury's looking at the count from the referee, Wilder's poised, and he's almost like a coiled rattlesnake ready to pounce. And I'm sure he was convinced at that point that the fight was going to be over in the next 30 seconds. But as it turned out, as you mentioned, not only did Fury get up and survive the onslaught that came, he also went on to win the remainder of the round. Obviously, of course, it wasn't going to affect anything on the judges' scorecards, but I think that planted the seed again of doubt with Deontay Wilder. I think he was overeager in terms of stepping in. He still couldn't find that range, even when he thought Tyson Fury had been down and maybe would have been hurt. He was still getting in too close, and because of the length of his arms, he was smothering his own work. And any opportunity he did have of landing again on Tyson Fury, maybe forcing the stoppage in the 9th round, was killtailed by his own wrongdoings in terms of how he was approaching his attacks and planning which punch to throw at what point, and the fact that Tyson Fury fought back. He didn't just cover up and try and see out the round. I think that was one of the things that shocked me with Tyson Fury was his ability to throw back in the face of adversity. Something we'll touch on in the 12th round as well, but in the 9th round was the same. He finished the round in the 9th really strong, on top, and yeah, it led into the 10th and the 11th round. Again, Fury rounds for me. The aggressor, landed the better shots, better movement, and completely befuddling Deontay Wilder in any approach that he had to trying to land on the Gypsy King. It was an amazing fight in the respect of it wasn't expected, and then obviously it leads into the now infamous 12th round.
Yeah, and going into that into that 12th round, I was talking to, I was with my dad and I was talking to him. I kept going, is this really as one-sided as I think it is? I had, going into the 12th round, I had Deontay Wilder winning one round, the 9th round, and I had Fury winning all the rest. And I was going, I can't be seeing this right. I can't be seeing this right. And he was like, no, I'm seeing it the same way. And like, we were kind of baffled at how well Tyson Fury had done up to this point, and thought, right, brilliant. All he's got to do now is cruise. He's just got to cruise. He's just got to circles, put his hands in the air, wiggle his tongue, and do all that showboating, and just avoid him. Just don't go anywhere near him. If he comes in, feint a jab and move away. Just stay away from him. You can lose the round. Just stay away. And obviously he didn't.
Yeah, of course. So from like you say, the moment the bell goes for the final round, you just believe in. I watched the fight with Sean, the other member of SimBoxx. We watched the fight, and to be honest, we was completely the same as you. We just watched him win 10 out of 11 rounds, and all he had to do was stay on his feet for the remainder of the fight, which was just 3 minutes, which he'd done again easily. Apart from the 9th round, he'd easily won the rest of the fight. And we sat there for the 60 seconds in between the 11th and the 12th, and we was struggling to even give Wilder any sort of credit for any of the early rounds. Even if you want to try and make it sound a bit more respectable, it just wasn't happening. He'd not done enough to win any of the rounds. It was literally 10 rounds to 1, and then obviously it was a 10-out round in the 9th. And then we come out, and it's a bit more of the same of Wilder trying to force his way in, and Fury dancing around, but for a split second he stopped. And as we all know, that's all Deontay Wilder needs, and he lets go with a huge right hand left hook combination. The left hook lands as Fury's on his way down from the right, and he hits the canvas like you just feel yourself yelling timber. He goes down that heavy, he lands flat on his back, and it always scares me when you see a boxer land and his eyes are open. And that's what happened with Tyson Fury. He landed flat on his back, his eyes were open, he was looking up at Jack Reese, and you just felt like the lights are on but nobody's home. And the count gets to 5, and then as he's saying 6, he moves, and you're like, it all happens so quick, and next minute he's on his feet and he's doing his little jog. Are you okay to continue? Yes, I am. And my jaw was on the floor. I get goosebumps even talking about it now. It's up there in the top 5 moments of my life as a boxing fan. It's an absolutely goosebump moment. He rises, as we've said from the time it happened. He's like a phoenix from the ashes. It's a truly astounding moment in the history of boxing.
Absolutely, it'll go down with Ali jumping up in the 15th round of the fight of the century. It's that dramatic. But the actual two of the people, like obviously Tyson Fury gets all the praise, and that the heart that he had to get up was incredible. But actually, the two people that haven't got credit, and that I would like to give credit to, are Deontay Wilder and Jack Reese. So Deontay Wilder, he watches Fury's tells. So Fury, when he resets, he wipes his nose and he bobs on the balls of his feet, wipes his nose and carries on. And it's the only time, almost at any point in a fight, where he stands still on his 2 feet. He bobs and he wipes his nose. And if you watch it, he bobs, and as he goes to wipe his nose, Wilder just flies in at him. And he's timed that, and he's practiced that. He's gone, whenever Fury wipes his nose and resets, that's when you fire at him, because that's when he's still. And Wilder, to time that shot and do it that perfectly, absolutely deserves credit. Because, again, like you say about a boxing brain, a better boxing brain than most people give him credit for, he's drilled that, and he's learnt that tell, and he's capitalised on that tell, and he's knocked him down. And the other person I'd like to say is Jack Reese. What a refereeing performance. Every single other referee in the world would have waved their hands and said that was off because Tyson Fury was out cold. But Jack Reese had the wherewithal to say, look, his right foot is up, he might still be okay, give him the count. And like I say, he popped up. And, again, credit to Tyson Fury. What a performance. What a human being. How do you do that? Nobody does that. Nobody has ever done that, really, outside of, like I say, the only comparable example for me is the 15th round of the fight of the century when Ali goes down off a vicious Frazier left hook, and then he just pops back up because he only knows how to get back up because, he is fighting, he is boxing, and Fury did exactly the same thing. And just because it's modern, often we go, the greats, and I'm guilty of it as well, the greats and the old-timers, and, that's the era. But what Tyson Fury did that night is comparable with any of them because it was that dramatic, it was that good to just get back up off an absolutely pulverizing combination from Wilder. Like, it was just vicious. And Fury, to his absolute credit, got up And that, what more can you say? It's so dramatic. It's dramatic in itself. It's absolutely astounding.
Yeah, definitely. I think I can only echo what you've said there. It was unbelievable. The one thing I will say, looking back, I've watched the fight a couple of times since, more than a couple of times, especially that 12th round. I could still not see myself complain if Jack Reese had waved that fight off within the first 4 seconds of administering the count. Such was the heaviness of the knockdown and the trouble that Tyson Fury was in. Like we say, his eyes were wide open. If Jack Reese, like you say, didn't have the wherewithal to look at different signs that maybe a naked eye wouldn't look at, I certainly could have seen that fight being waved off, and we wouldn't be in this position now. We wouldn't have had the dramaticness of how he risen and he defied all the odds to get up, and it was an amazing moment. And another thing that stuck out for me, after the knockdown, he beat the count, he gets back up, the ref says fight, and like Wilder lands a huge left hook, and it just bounces off the chin of Tyson Fury, and it's overlooked because of the dramaticness just a few seconds before. But aside from the 2 knockdowns, that is the hardest punch that was landed in the whole of the fight. And it just bounces off the chin of Fury, and of course Wilder goes in for the kill again. Again, smothers his own work. Again, he's lost with the boxing defences of Tyson Fury when Tyson Fury decides to lock him up or move around. And then out of nowhere, Tyson Fury lands a huge straight left, plants it right on the chin of Deontay Wilder and stops him in his tracks. And at that point, I thought, crisis over. And then it was a question of, is Tyson Fury going to knock out Deontay Wilder in his 12th round? And it looked ever so close at that point.
He nearly did. He nearly did it, and it was absolutely mind blowing. But if you've been peppered with jabs from a 19-stone man for 36 minutes, you're not going to beat your best. And Fury realised that, and it's incredible after the knockdown he had the wherewithal to realise it, but he did. He realised this guy's tired. He's blown himself out trying to finish me. I'm going to go for it. And he actually, probably still suffering a concussion, went for him, and he nearly stopped him. And if that was a 5-minute round, like in MMA, he probably would have stopped him because Wilder was gassed. He was done for. After he put everything into trying to finish him in that 12th round, he'd put everything into celebrating and doing that little dance, and then he was absolutely knackered. And Fury just went for him, and I genuinely believe that if it was an old 15-rounder, I don't think Wilder would have lasted the 15. He was too tired. And Fury got back up, and he won the remainder of the round again, the same as in the night. He got up and he won the remainder of the round. And it's an incredible feat of showing you what the human body can do at its best, and what the human mind can propel the human body to do. It's a feat of absolute, it's just incredible what Tyson Fury was able to do in that 12th round.
Yeah, I certainly agree with what you're saying there, Ewan. And, as we approach the end of the 12th round, the bell goes. Tyson Fury jumps up on the ropes to celebrate. Deontay Wilder almost looks despondent, heading back to his corner until they try and G him up a little bit. And once that final bell went, there was no doubt in my mind that we had a new WBC heavyweight champion of the world. It was an amazing end to a masterclass of boxing from Tyson Fury. There was no doubt, as long as he survived that 12th round without multiple knockdowns, there was no doubt in my mind that he could have lost that fight. I was congratulating him via social media. I was just waiting for the announcement. And then finally, after a bit of a wait, we have Jimmy Lennon reading out the scorecards, and we hear split decision. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. You just knew that something wasn't right. There was no way it could have even been a split decision. Never mind anything awarded to Deontay Wilder. I just didn't know how to begin. I was still pissed off at the idea of it being split, that he'd even took one card away from Fury and it wasn't unanimous. I just couldn't believe it. And then we hear split decision draw. And my jaw hit the floor when Tyson Fury was knocked down in the 12th, and I was just about recovering, and then bam, it hits the floor again. They took the title away from him. I thought it was firmly in his grasp. Deontay Wilder retains, of course, via a draw. And I think the telling moment is when the referee's holding both hands up. Tyson Fury looks pissed off. You could tell that he thought he'd won that fight. And Wilder looks relieved. He doesn't even look like he's about to celebrate. He looks relieved that he's somehow still managed to get out of the arena, still in possession of that green and gold belt.
Absolutely. It's to my mind, there's only one other. If you look back at heavyweight championship bouts, there's only one other bout, and that's Lewis Holyfield one, where Lennox Lewis was in control of that fight and he was given a draw. But other than that, if you look all the way back into the days of John L. Sullivan and Gentleman Jim Corbett, there's not been an egregious decision in a heavyweight title fight as bad, I don't think, as that one that was given in Los Angeles. It was absolutely appalling. It even if you give Wilder every close round and you give Fury all of his clear ones, you still only can give Wilder 2 more rounds other than the ones he got knockdowns in. Fury controlled the fight for every single second that he wasn't on the canvas, which is absolutely crazy to say. But like I say, outside a big left hook in the 12th and the 2 knockdowns, Deontay Wilder didn't offer anything. Tyson Fury was in control of the vast majority of that fight, and he was on his feet at the end, which is all you can ask of him. And yeah, I was absolutely devastated. I was very disheartened with the state of boxing and the fact that somebody could work that hard and have arguably the best comeback since George Foreman robbed from them by a set of crooked judges in Los Angeles.
Yeah, definitely. It left a real sour taste in the mouth, and it was an all too often occurrence in boxing in recent years. Something we've touched on previously in different episodes of Let's Talk Boxing. Judges' scorecards and what might be done to stop this. And we're still, we're almost 18 months down the line from the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder first fight, and nothing seems to have changed. We don't seem to be anywhere near solving the issue of these crooked cards. There's no other way to put it. And so that was the immediate afterthought of the fight. And at that point, I thought, moving past Christmas into the new year, into 2019, it was just going to be a matter of time before we heard something from the WBC in terms of we want an immediate rematch. Of course, that was ordered, and I think the next part of the podcast, I think we'll discuss your thoughts, our thoughts on why we didn't get the immediate rematch and where both fighters went from there. So, like we say, it was ordered. The WBC had ordered Deontay Wilder to defend his title against Tyson Fury again. Such was their dismay with the original decision. What was your thoughts around that point, Ewan?
I think that it's a hard one because, again, we'll never know what discussions go on behind closed doors. And, between the WBC and Al Heyman and some of the slipperiest characters in the dark underbelly of United States boxing. And I don't know what the decision was, but to be honest, I don't think Wilder fancied it. I think Wilder's a confidence beast, and I think one of the reasons why he was so poor in the early rounds is because Fury knocked his confidence by showboating, and I think that Al Heyman recognised, and the PBC recognised that for Wilder to be at his best, he's got to be supremely confident. So let's get him a couple of tin cans, and then go for it. And I think the same can be said of Fury and Bob Arum. And Bob Arum saw his potential in America and said, right, no chance he's going back in with Wilder straight away in a fight that he could well lose, when we can give him some tin cans, sell him in America, and then, the next fight, when they do it, which they always would, is going to gross millions and millions and millions of pounds. And it's, I think it's a savvy business decision on both. Although it's frustrating as a boxing fan, but I can understand why they did it. But again, the opponents they did choose on both sides left quite a lot to be desired, as far as I'm concerned.
I think this is quite an interesting topic, and it is going to be a matter of opinion because, unfortunately, we're not in a position to be able to discuss things with Mr. Heyman, or people of that nature to actually see what the discussions were. My thoughts on it, I think the fact that the immediate rematch didn't happen, I think the reasons why it didn't happen lie more at the feet of Tyson Fury than they do Deontay Wilder. But I believe it wasn't Tyson Fury's decision. I think it was took away from him when he signed a huge deal with Top Rank, to be involved with him, along with Frank Warren, and how much Frank Warren plays in the career of Tyson Fury, I'm not too sure. And obviously he's linked up with MTK Global. But I think it was more a business decision from Top Rank to build his profile. Again, like you say, it's a savvy business decision. The name of Tyson Fury now in America is far beyond what it was December 1st, 2018. So again, it's not what we want to see as a as a fan of boxing, we want to see the best fight the best as soon as possible. You know, we're an impatient bunch as a set of fans. I do believe both men would have took the immediate rematch if it was their decision to make. But as it is, I think it's more Team Fury stepping back from the rematch, more so than Team Wilder. I think they want to build their profile a lot more than what it was at that point.
Yeah, again, we'll never know, but ultimately what did happen was they both had two fights, and they both had two fights in the kind of summer and then autumn time, and against, like I said, opponents which I found a little bit lackluster.
Definitely. So I think, if we was to look at those bouts, up first, of course, we had Deontay Wilder fighting Dominic Breazeale. This took place in May of 2019, at a time when I thought, at least if we don't get the Fury fight, I wonder if there'll be an AJ call, or I wonder if Deontay Wilder will fight Dillian Whyte. That was the one silver lining to the cloud of the immediate rematch not happening. I actually thought, another Brit might have got that shot. As it were, the WBC, it's a whole different conversation. We could be here all night with the flaws of the different governing bodies, but the fight was given to Dominic Breazeale. Even though he wasn't ranked higher than Dillian Whyte, he was given the mandatory slot. And so in May we had Dominic Breazeale challenging Deontay Wilder for the WBC heavyweight title.
Yeah, and Dominic Breazeale was a punch bag there to be hit. He had absolutely nothing to offer whatsoever. He's a BC D level heavyweight at best. Anthony Joshua only kept him on his feet because he needed rounds. It was Anthony Joshua's one of his kind of first defences, and although Anthony Joshua went 7 rounds with him, it was, again, he won every single second of every single round. We all knew Dominic Breazeale had nothing to offer. He has no head movement. He's a big stationary target, and for someone like Wilder, that's a death sentence. To stand in the ring with Wilder and not move your head and not move your feet is a ridiculous thing to do. And I think everybody knew in boxing, and I certainly thought that Deontay Wilder would knock him out and he'd do it in spectacular fashion. But that's all Dominic Breazeale was ever brought in for, was to be destroyed. He was not a credible opponent in the way that a Dillian Whyte or an AJ would be. He was just there to be knocked out, and I think Wilder did exactly what he was meant to do that night and just absolutely annihilated him.
Yeah, certainly. I'm inclined to agree. I think the fact that Breazeale and Wilder had some sort of altercation in the past, and they had some sort of beef on a personal level, I think that was exaggerated to make people believe this was some sort of competitive fight, that there was going to be an edge to Dominic Breazeale, that he was going to show something that he'd not shown before and be competitive against arguably the most dangerous heavyweight on the planet at that point, maybe arguably at this point still. But that wasn't the case, As the fight began, the first bell went, I believe Breazeale looked like a rabbit in the headlights. He was stiff, he was robotic. He did land a good shot as Wilder came in, which kind of woke up Wilder. I think Wilder was on cruise control. And then, of course, as the ref separates them, they come back together. And Wilder lands his trademark right hand, and it took the soul of Dominic Breazeale away from his body. Why the referee counted that, I'll never know. I think that was just as heavy a knockdown of Breazeale as it was of Tyson Fury, but Dominic Breazeale didn't show the signs of a fighter that was going to recover the way Tyson Fury did. It was a spectacular knockout, a brutal knockout, but it was nothing more than what was expected of Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that assessment.
So, coming off the back of that, we of course went into June 1st, which was Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz. We covered that in the previous podcast, but I think it was such a rich moment for heavyweight boxing that we had the top 3 fighting in such close proximity to each other. So we come past June 1st, and then we go into the 15th of June, and we have Tyson Fury making having a bout against unheralded German heavyweight Tom Schwarz. On paper he was undefeated, but he'd not fought anybody of note. And I think this was a huge coming out party for Tyson Fury. If we, in all honesty, Tom Schwarz being unbeaten kind of added to the idea that again it could have been a credible opponent, sorry. But he was nothing more than a body for Tyson Fury to look good against and set up bigger fights further down the road.
Absolutely, the ring walk was better than the fight. It was certainly more entertaining. Tyson Fury was, he was 10, the same way Wilder in Brazil. He was 10, 11, 12 levels above Tom Schwartz. And, he didn't even have to sit down on his punches to knock him down. He was just hitting him so frequently and with such ease that the referee was like, I'm not having this. It was a mismatch in the same way as Wilder Brazil. It was a mismatch. And like I said, the ring walk was amazing. The Apollo Creed living in America. It was an amazing show, but it was a show, and it was Tom Schwartz was simply a tin can for Tyson Fury to knock over. It wasn't competitive at any point.
Yeah, certainly. One of the entertaining moments in the fight, and one that was magnified beyond belief. And you would have thought that Tom Schwartz was some sort of Gennady Golovkin of the heavyweight division. The way people reacted to the moment where Tyson Fury is almost Matrix-like, and he's on the ropes and he's dodging the punches coming from Tom Schwartz, but watching it in real time, you would think that Tom Schwartz was stood in mud or quicksand, and his hands weren't going as quick as what you'd think when you've seen the edited versions on social media, where again it was like some sort of playback of the Matrix from Tyson Fury, and I think it was more an entertainment spectacle than a competitive sporting contest, in all honesty.
Absolutely, but that's the nature of social media. The clip of Ali that I see the most on social media is where he dodges about 10 punches like that and wiggles his hips, and people forget that that's actually an exhibition fight against Greg Page. It was a sparring partner. It's not a competitive fight, but it was about as competitive as Fury Schwartz. It was a lot of those social media clips can be misleading, and I think that like you say, it was Tom Schwartz was not a credible opponent, and I think that social media is quick to forget.
Yeah, certainly. I think, a lot is sometimes made of shall we say, casual boxing fans' opinion. But at the same time, it was those guys that fight was set up for. Hardcore boxing fans, true boxing fans, we always knew what Tyson Fury was capable of, and we always knew we was going to have to endure these kind of bouts to lead to the Deontay Wilder rematch. But for people that might have been tuning in for the first time, wanting to know what all the hollering was about, Tyson Fury did look spectacular. If you wasn't to know who his opponent was or what level he should have been boxing at, it ticked all the boxes in terms of raising profile, making Tyson Fury look an amazing boxer. And of course, it's always good when a heavyweight boxer scores a knockout, which he did, and it was a brutal stoppage in the end without Tyson Fury ever getting out of first gear.
Absolutely, but again, like the Brazil thing, I think all of these fights weren't the most challenging in terms of the opposition, and especially the first two that we've spoken about now. And it's one of those things. If you're at the level that Wilder and Fury are at, you're going to knock out guys like Schwartz and guys like Brazil 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, now, something that I was going to look back on at the end of looking at both their fights that happened in the interim, both Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder 1 and Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder 2. But looking at the first two opponents, and you say they was both put in there, and they performed as expected. So we expected Wilder to knock out Dominic Brazil, and we expected Tyson Fury to knock out Tom Schwartz. What is your opinion on a possible Dominic Brazil against Tom Schwartz fight? How would you see that fight playing out in terms of, it's easy for us to say one's this level fighter and one's this level fighter, but for me, I believe Dominic Brazil is a level above even Tom Schwartz.
I think it'd be a good fight. I think it'd be entertaining. Like you say, sometimes when you mix up those B-level heavyweights, you get really, really good fights. But I think they're about the same level. I think that the comparison, I think it would be a tough fight for, again, like you, I would favour Brazil simply because of his Olympic pedigree. Yeah. But again, I don't think there's very much in it. I think Tom Schwartz on his night could really give him problems. And I think, but again, like I say, they're not elite, and it doesn't really matter. I think they might be a good fight. I think Schwartz could win. I think Brazil probably would win, but you never know.
Yeah, of course. So coming off the back of Tyson Fury knocking out Tom Schwartz, he had to return to the ring before Deontay Wilder did, and of course in September he took on again little known but undefeated Otto Wallen. or Otto Wallin, depending on who you listen to pronounce his name, of Sweden. He was undefeated coming into the bout, and again, I think he was looked upon as nothing more than a tin can, as you say. With all due respect, I think he was just put in there as another opponent for Tyson Fury to perform well against.
Absolutely, that's what they thought. They thought it was another Tom Schwartz, but actually a very different man turned up. And I wrote a preview article. So Wallin had been trained by his father, and he lost his father the week of the fight, and he still fought. And everybody knows the story of James Douglas losing his mother the week of the greatest upset in heavyweight history when he knocked out Mike Tyson in Tokyo. And I thought that Wallin was dangerous and far more, and being a big awkward southpaw as well. I think he's the most credible of the opponents, and he proved that. He gave Tyson that horrendous cut, and hard fought 12 rounds. But again, like I say, Wallin, he still proved, a level below the Tyson Fury in that fight.
Yeah, certainly. So of course Tyson Fury took a points victory against Otto Wallin. He suffered an horrendous cut. And one thing that I find myself questioning or thinking about when it comes to that bout is, do you believe Tyson Fury underperformed? Do you think Wallin overperformed, or do you think Wallin might have actually been better than what we give him credit for, and that was his coming out fight?
I think the latter. I think that Otto Wallin, big horrible southpaw heavyweight European straight up style, is the southpaw style suits European boxers better in terms of being straight up like that, because it's harder to make the entry across the body. And I think that Wallin is going to be good. And I think he's supposedly going to fight Lucas Brown. I think he'll knock Lucas Brown out. I think Wallin is a good fighter, and I think he proved that he was a good fighter. But again, I think more than anything, the cut helped Wallin, and I think it hindered Fury. And it was such a vicious, gruesome cut that it kind of excused the whole thing, because if Tyson's fully fit and he's not, does he take more risks to stop Wallin, but because of the cut, I think he went slightly more defensive just to protect his eye and not get the fight stopped by the doctor.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was the one worry that I had overriding everything else, was what if they took out the hands of Tyson Fury, because of course Tyson Fury is never going to be asked to be pulled out. I think you could take away one of his legs and he'd hop around the ring. But if that decision was took away from him by the ring doctor, because again, the same way I wouldn't have argued if the Wilder first fight was waved off in the 12th round. I couldn't have argued if the doctor had decided this cut was too gruesome and it was affecting his sight, because it was horrendous. And it would have left little argument had the fight been pulled at that moment, which would have been catastrophic looking ahead to the Deontay Wilder rematch.
Yeah, but both instances just prove, I think they prove more about Tyson Fury than they do about, the officials that didn't stop the fight. I think that Tyson Fury battled through them because that's all he knows how to do. He's a fighting man, and he says it all the time. You have to nail me to the canvas to stop me, and you really do. Like, the reason that Jack Reese continued to count is because Fury gets up. He's proved that he gets up, and he's proved that he can do it. And the reason the doctor didn't stop the fight is because it's Tyson Fury, and he'll fight through it. And even if he can't see out of that eye, he'll fight through it, because that's what he does. That's all he knows how to do. And I think that fight did prove, although Wallin isn't, he's not a Deontay Wilder, it did prove that Fury can battle through adversity in a way that, a couple of months earlier Joshua couldn't against Ruiz. Do you know what I mean? It's the same sort of adversity. Joshua got rocked, Fury got cut, but one fought through and one didn't. And I think it was quite telling, even though he was, a subpar performance against a subpar opponent. Andy Ruiz Jr. was a subpar opponent, and as soon as he gave Joshua some adversity, then Joshua crumbled. But Fury didn't. He battled on through with basically half his face hanging off.
Yeah, certainly. It's difficult to argue with the majority of your points there, Ewan. I think there is something instilled in Tyson Fury that sees him battle through these moments. Whether it be in his personal life, whether it be inside a boxing ring. He has this grit and this determination to prevail through adversity, and I think it's almost unmatched in terms of what we've seen in heavyweight boxing. Like you say, Anthony Joshua had his first major crisis, June 1st, and we've seen how that ended. Deontay Wilder's not faced that kind of real adversity. Of course, there was the Luis Ortiz fight, but I wouldn't compare that to the physical injuries suffered by Fury in the Wallin fight, or the way he rose in the 12th fight. I think they're another level of extreme adversity compared to Luis Ortiz won for Deontay Wilder. Of course, coming off the back of Tyson Fury's victory there, we had Deontay Wilder rematching Luis Ortiz. I remember when the announcement was made, I can't lie and say I was excited by the fight originally. I felt kind of underwhelmed, and I don't know whether that's because, of course, I'm a fan of I'm a fan of Dylan White, and I wanted Dylan White to get that fight, but we had all the palaver of the fallout from the Rivas fight for Dylan White, so it was never really an option for him to box Deontay Wilder at that point. But there was just something about Luis Ortiz. I thought he had his moment in the first fight. He'd aged, and I didn't see what he was going to do different in the second fight to really give Deontay Wilder any kind of problems that he'd not already dealt with and put to bed. I didn't think it warranted a rematch at that point, considering the other challenges in the heavyweight division. But we got Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz too. What was your thoughts on the announcement to begin with, Ewan?
Again, I think Ortiz is every time you announce an Ortiz fight now for anyone, he's an easier opponent. He's getting older. He's 146 now, and he's just getting older and older and slower and easier to knock out for someone like Deontay Wilder. And even then, in the fight, he struggled. And I think Luis Ortiz is aging. He's over the hill. I don't think he's any more a credible opponent than Otto Wallin. A hungry undefeated southpaw, or Luis Ortiz, who Deontay Wilder's already beaten, and who is, like I say, there's the famous comment to America, he's 145 years old. Well, Luis Ortiz really is. And I just thought that he would get obliterated in the way he did in the end, but obviously I didn't quite foresee him putting up the fight that he did.
Yeah, I think so. Looking at the bout, this came at the back end of November, and Deontay Wilder, he lost every second of every round, through round 1 to 6, and then entering the 7th round, he was losing that round as well. And of course, with it around, I can't remember exactly how long left, but I think he got 15, 20 seconds. He unloaded with this right hand that landed on the forehead of Luis Ortiz and completely obliterated him. Say what you will about Luis Ortiz in terms of level of ability or anything else, as a pure visionary experience, it was truly spectacular. It's what Wilder does time and time again. He was losing the fight. He got to a point in the fight where he'd lost so many rounds that he couldn't win on points. I think he was losing the 7th round. Had Ortiz seen through that round, for me, he couldn't win on points. Ortiz was on his way to becoming the new champion, and that was halted in its tracks. The right hand, again, obliterated him absolutely off his on switch. The look on Ortiz's face when he's splattered on the canvas as he looks up at the ref is sheer disbelief. There was no recovering from it, and Wilder again retains his title. I personally think I was more impressed, if we're looking back as a whole, with 2019 for Deontay Wilder. I think he had a better year than Tyson Fury. But again, that's a matter of opinion. I think you make a valid point about, is Ortiz a more credible opponent than Wallin? I think maybe because it's easy to suggest that Ortiz is a more credible opponent just for the fact that he's more established in terms of more people know him maybe. But as a whole, I was more impressed with 2019 from a Deontay Wilder perspective than I was of a Tyson Fury perspective, if I'm being honest.
I think I don't think many would disagree with you, but again, I think it's what you see in those fights, and I think throughout all of those fights, the perspective I was watching it from was these are just preparations for the rematch, and I think that the latter two fights of Tyson coming through adversity and Wilder coming through adversity, they're just great preparation for what is now February 22nd.
Yeah, definitely. I think the one thing that I will just quickly touch on there, I think to give a little credit to what you mentioned about Otto Wallin, I think that victory could look better in time with the fact that Valen could go on to do things in the heavyweight division. I think if he goes on and beats Lucas Brown and then he takes on people of that ilk and builds a bit of a record for himself, I think we could look back in time and realise that the Tyson Fury victory and the manner of adversity that he defeated could look better in time. So I think that's one thing that I will say. Although I do think Wilder had a better 2019, I think that could change in time because Luis Ortiz isn't going to have a credible win at any kind of level in the heavyweight division from now. I think he may fight lower level opposition and try and make some cash. Whereas I think Otto Wallen's on his way up. I think his future is a lot brighter than Luis Ortiz.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. So here we are anyway. February 22nd. It was a date that was penciled in way before the interim bouts even took place. It was common knowledge that this is what we was working towards, and let's build the profile and let's build the energy towards it. But February 22nd was always mentioned, and it stood the test of time. We got past all 4 bouts in the meantime, and we had the official announcement. I was over the moon when we finally had it officially confirmed, and here we are.
And it's really exciting. You can't say anything more. Like we said on at the beginning, it's just everything you want from a heavyweight fight. It's a rematch. We've seen what both guys can do. Fury can win every single round, and Wilder can knock you out in a split second. I think that there's obviously some things to consider in what they might change and what they might keep the same. Obviously, Fury's coming in heavier. Wilder, I think, too, is coming in heavier. I think it's a really interesting one to break down.
Yeah, definitely. And you touched on a couple of subjects there that we will go through. This will be our official fight breakdown, which will lead into our predictions. And I think one of the biggest things that I'm going to be intrigued by, and we're not going to find this out up until Friday, but something that I do want to discuss is what do you believe to be ideal weights for each fighter, and what do you believe the actual weight will be? Do you think, like you say, is Fury going to be suited to being heavier and planting his feet and trying to land some heavy shots? I do believe Wilder needs to be heavier to put more meat on his shots and keep Fury down if that's what he believes he's going to do. I do think that is almost like a little battle within itself, a little battle within the war, if you like.
I'm gonna be quite controversial as usual, but I'm gonna go the other way to you. I'm gonna say that I like Fury heavy and I like Wilder light. I think Deontay Wilder's the thing that kills is not necessarily power. We all know Wilder has power, but speed kills. And if Deontay Wilder can deliver that power fast, I think that is the key. And I think that if he wants to beat Tyson Fury, he's got to catch him. And Tyson Fury can move around that ring like nobody's business. And for Wilder to catch him, he wants to be light to run and catch him. And I think it's a bold statement to come in at 215 pounds for a heavyweight bout. You know what I mean? That's old school weights. You know what I mean? I thought that was brilliant. And I think that he's at his best when he's quick and he's got stamina, good stamina, and he can keep himself moving around that ring to deliver the power for 12 rounds. And I like Fury heavy because then he can outman him. Do you know what I mean? He can lean on him in the clinch and he can push him around and he can be the bigger man in a way that he wasn't last time out. He was so focused on losing the weight that he didn't. When they came together, they just waited. Neither of them punched. They got pushed out and then they went for it again.
Yeah.
At 6'9" and 19 stone, I don't think he needs to be above 19 stone. But if he hits in and around 19 stone and he leans on Deontay Wilder, who's not far over 15 stone. It's gonna take the toll. It's gonna make him zap that energy, and I think that the best fight comes when we have a heavy Fury and a light Wilder, because Wilder's able to catch him, but Fury's able to work him in his inside. And the knockout of Steve Cunningham came. Everyone forgets he knocked him out cold when Cunningham's head was basically on his chest. You know what I mean? I think Fury's best chance for a knockout is to be heavy and swarm him and push on him and lean on him, and I think that's why I like him heavy.
Yeah, I can't really disagree. As much as I do want to see a little bit more weight with Deontay Wilder, I don't want it to be, drastic. I just think he has to close that gap a little bit. And like you say, if Fury's planning on, I think it'll be dressed up as he's coming in heavier to land heavier shots to take out Deontay Wilder. But I think I'd be more inclined to lean towards the point you made, where I think it'd be to outman him. When he's in close, lean on him, smother him, make him feel that heavy, late 18, maybe 19 stone frame. I think that'd be more telling rather than Fury's putting on weight, for sheer punch power. I'm more inclined to agree with the fact that, you know, you mentioned it'll be to outman him, to out hustle him, to smother him, to wear him down, to grind him down before taking him out. At the end of that, if that is the Tyson Fury mindset.
I think that that's going to be the game plan. I think that, you know, to knock out to say you're going for the knockout, which I know we've got a question about that later, but I think that the only way you can do that is if he really tires Wilder. We saw him vulnerable in the 12th round when he was tired. You've got to make him tired earlier, and the way you do that is you make him carry that frame. And there's two distances you can get hit from. There's inside and outside, but if you're outside the outside or inside the inside, Wilder can't hit you. His power's useless. If you're up against you, if his head's in your chest, he can't hit you. If you're away from him, he can't hit you. And I think they're the distances Fury will exploit, is the one where he can stand outside Wilder's right hand and jab at him, and the one where he gets right inside, and what Wilder even can't generate any power with those big looping shots because Fury's right on top of him. And I think that will be the difference in this fight between the first fight and the second fight, and that will be the difference with, you know, Sugar Hill Stewart rather than Ben Davison, rather than box and move and lateral movement. And it might not be quite as pretty, but I think he might just get on the inside and work on the inside because he is so much physically bigger than Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, certainly. So I think that ties in nicely with the next point of how much of an effect do you believe the change of trainer by Tyson Fury? You know, of course, he's went with Sugar Hill, nephew of the late great Emmanuel Stewart, of course, replacing Ben Davison, who, you know, rightly received a lot of acclaim for the game plan in the first fight, but then came under a lot of fire from John Fury, Tyson Fury's dad, in the aftermath of the Otto Wallin fight. I think Fury Senior was very open and direct with his words towards Ben Davison. I don't know how much of that might have played an effect with Tyson Fury changing. But yeah, do you think that will play a pivotal role in the rematch?
I think Sugar Hill Stewart's a good coach, and to be honest, nobody's going to teach Tyson Fury how to box. Tyson Fury will always box the way Tyson Fury boxes. You can't teach him. You're not going to be able to say, right, this week you're going to change your style up completely and you're going to go with a peekaboo like Mike Tyson. It's not going to happen. You need someone to get him in shape and tweak little tiny things and put little combinations in there and I think that Ben Davison's a great trainer and what he did with Tyson Fury is amazing. But honestly, I don't know how much of it was actual boxing ability. Tyson Fury's got the boxing ability. It's about practicing. And, you know, he's got a good resume. He's got a better resume. Sugar Hill Stewart has a better resume than Ben Davison. And this is not a slight on Ben Davison. In my opinion, he's the best young coach out of the UK. But Sugar Hill Stewart worked with Andy Lee, Lennox Lewis, and when he was coming up, he boxed with the likes of Tommy Hearns, Michael Moorer, out of that Kronk gym, watching his uncle day in, day out. And, you know, you learn from the best. Emmanuel Stewart learned from Eddie Futch, and Emmanuel Stewart and then Sugar Hill's learned from Emmanuel Stewart. Do you know what I mean? That's as good a lineage as any in boxing. And as much as it'll be sad to see Ben Davison go, because he is, in my eyes, a brilliant coach, I think Sugar Hill Stewart will be. I don't think it'll affect Tyson that much at all. I don't think it'll be that much good or bad. You're not going to reinvent the wheel with Tyson, but you are going to get him just those little extra things. Like I say, maybe the clinch game that they had with Lennox Lewis and Vladimir Klitschko that they worked on when Emmanuel was still alive, and maybe they can add those things because they were two of the best clinching heavyweights. And if they can add that into Fury's game, I think that he can be really, really effective with that.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's a fair argument. I think the one thing that struck me, of course, when the announcement was made or the decision was made, was shock. You know, I'm an old believer if something isn't broke, don't fix it. And that screamed that to me. You know, there was no real reason that I could put my finger on, or anybody's put the finger on to say this is why he's changed, other than I want to change to keep things fresh, which almost sounds like some sort of cop out. You know, he wants to avoid the subject, and there is no real reason, if you like, or there may be a reason you don't want to delve into. But in black and white terms, I wouldn't say it puts him as a disadvantage because, like you say, Tyson Fury is going to be Tyson Fury. But I would have been more confident with Tyson Fury going into this fight with Ben Davison in his corner, given how they've performed up until this point.
Mm. Yeah, I don't disagree. I can understand the changes. Upheaval can never be good. But also shout out to AJ at AJ Live and Direct who actually asked this question, but he'll be left out of the question and answer session because I think we've answered that one pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. We appreciate the question, of course. So another point I wanted to bring up is, do we believe both boxers will be better walking into this fight, entering the ring on February 22nd, 2012, compared to who they were entering the ring December 1st, 2018?
I personally do. I think that until your body starts to go, you always learn in boxing. And, there's famous examples that heavyweights get better with age. Your George Foremans, your Jersey Joe Walcotts. You know what I mean? A lot of the best heavyweights had a renaissance.
Yeah.
And neither of these guys have had too much wear and tear on them. Do you know what I mean? They've not, outside of each other, they've really not been challenged that much. And I think that they're still fresh. And, you're 30. Well, I know Wilder's a little bit older, but he didn't have a serious fight until he was 30 already. Do you know what I mean? He was his amateur career and his early pro career. He didn't get a scratch on him. I think that these guys are blossoming now and they're hitting their peaks now. And I think that that's a great thing for the sport. I think it's a great thing for this rematch because I don't think the interim fights have taken anything away from anyone. Maybe the cartilage around Fury's eye, but other than that, I think he got better as a result of it. And I think he upped his levels of resilience.
Yeah, I'm certainly inclined to again agree with you there. I do think both men come into the fight more rounded, more knowledgeable, better prepared. I don't think age is a factor, especially again, like you say, with them being heavyweights. Heavyweights tend to peak later, and given the level of opposition and little damage that he took early in his career, I think even though he's approaching 35, I think Deontay Wilder is a young bodied man, if that makes sense, in the fact that he's not faced any physical adversity too much. I think there's been a couple of hand injuries over the years and stuff, but nothing that's hampered him going forward. We've not seen anything in the fights in the meantime against Luis Ortiz and the like, where he's actually had these knockouts and then complained of any problems with his hands, or he's not looked any slower, he's not looked sluggish as an aging fighter would. So yeah, the long and short of it, I do think they're entering the ring on February 22nd. Much better fighters, and I think that only leads to a great fight for us boxing fans, for anybody that is going to be tuning in and watching it. I think we're going to see two guys in their physical peak, in their boxing ability peak, going at it, and there's nothing better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's a real, again, the battle of styles, but nothing's being taken away. They're really at their peak, and I just can't wait for it.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that leads perfectly on to, after discussing how they'll approach the fight, what we think will play a factor. The all-important SimBoxx presents Let's Talk Boxing, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury 2. Official prediction, Ewan. I think I'll give you the floor first. I think I'll cop out and I'll listen to what you've got to say first. But I've got my prediction. It's not going to change. But yeah, I think I'll give you the floor first. Let's get your official prediction.
I think it's no secret now that I quite like Tyson Fury, and I think he's quite good at boxing. I personally am backing Fury to do the job again. He did it the first time. He beat him. Everybody knows that he beat him. He won 10 rounds of that fight. And even then, he won the rounds. He won the rest of the round after he got knocked down. He boxes him. He keeps him at range. And he does the same as he did in the first fight. Like I say, a fight with Deontay Wilder will always have sketchy moments. He will hit you and you will feel it. But I just think that a strong Tyson Fury, and everybody knows that he got robbed in the first one, they'll be looking out for it, and the judges won't want that scrutiny. I think that Tyson Fury will win a lopsided unanimous decision as he puts it on Wilder. I think he'll put more hooks on the end of his combinations, and instead of backing out after the right hand, stepping in on him after the right hand, and then he can throw a hook up close and grab hold of him. I think that will be a really effective technique, and I think he'll grind out a unanimous decision. I don't think he'll stop him as much as I've said he might this week and caught a lot of flack for that. But I think there's a possibility he stops him. But I think that the most likely outcome for me is a Tyson Fury unanimous decision.
Fantastic. I respect your prediction. It's great to hear how you break down the fight and your thoughts on how you think it'll play out. As much as I respect it, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. I'm on the other side of the coin. And before I give my prediction, I just want to say I as a proud Brit, as a proud Mancunian, I do want Tyson Fury to get the victory. I do believe that he would fight Anthony Joshua in a huge unification bout before Deontay Wilder would, if that was to arise. But that all goes out the window if I put my boxing feelings to the side and I just look at it as a pure fight. I think Deontay Wilder will knock out Tyson Fury this time. I think Tyson Fury has gained a lot of confidence through these interim bouts, and a lot of the things that he's saying is leading me to believe that he will go for the knockout. And I think if that's the case, and if he engages with Deontay Wilder, he's engaging with the most dangerous heavyweight on the planet. And there's only going to be one winner. We've already mentioned, Fury landed some heavy shots in that first fight. They didn't really put a dent in Wilder as much as they might have slowed him, but there was never a point when I actually thought, oh my God, Deontay Wilder's going to be knocked out. There was moments where I did think, oh wow, I didn't see that coming. But if Tyson Fury comes in looking to knock out Deontay Wilder, then he'll be took out early. I think if Fury does what Fury does, and he takes the fight long, I still think there's going to be a moment in these 12 rounds where Deontay Wilder lands a trademark right hand. I think it'll be a heavy shot. I think it'll be a single punch knockout when it does happen. I think my official prediction is Deontay Wilder knocks out Tyson Fury between 7 and 9 rounds.
It's exciting. You can't split them, and that's why we like it. That's why we like boxing. And that's why we like heavyweight boxing. But yeah, respectfully, you are wrong.
The great thing about boxing is when we get to this situation is that we have to find out. As those two guys get in the ring, we will be given an answer, and that's the beautiful thing about the sport of boxing is that we find out. We myself and you can discuss this. Boxing fans across social media or in the day-to-day interactions with other boxing fans can throw up a million reasons why a fight might play out a certain way, but until it actually happens, we don't know, and then we do get a definitive answer 99 times out of 100. So
absolutely, and that's why it's exciting, and I can't wait.
Yeah, certainly. Ewan, I really enjoyed looking at the fight there. I think we give a good insight and our thoughts on the fight. I hope the listeners enjoy listening to what we've had to say. But I think for our next protocol in terms of the podcast, something a bit different. We've got a fan question and answer session to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just to be conscious of time, we'll make them really quick. But I think that there's some really interesting questions here, and it'd be good to get our thoughts on both of those. So the first one was Dan at UK Fight Night, who we interact with a lot. He's very knowledgeable boxing fan. So he put, obvious one, but the winner of Wilder Fury is the best heavyweight in the world, or do they have to beat AJ first? So does Wilder and Fury, the winner of this, become the best heavyweight in the world, or do they have to go through AJ? I'll let you go for that one, Luke.
Yeah, certainly. So my thoughts on that would be, yes, I do believe the winner of this fight is the number one heavyweight on the planet. Even though, I kind of contradict myself sometimes with that because Anthony Joshua holds more belts than the winner of this fight. I just think that the victor of this fight will hold a single victory better than anything that Anthony Joshua has done. So therefore, for me, the winner of this fight is the number one heavyweight on the planet.
I agree, yeah. And I think that to go number one in the world, you win this fight. But to be the best of the era, you have to be AJ. And I think I think to be the best, the difference between being the best now and the best of the era is that AJ fight. But yeah, for me, I agree. They go number one.
Yeah, I can agree with that. That in terms of the bigger picture, the fight does have to happen with Anthony Joshua at some point. Yeah, definitely agree with that.
So the only other question we have about Wilder and Fury is again the one we've answered. It's James Jackson at Double J 72 about Wilder KOing Fury, and there's a lot of noise out of Fury in his camp out KOing Wilder. Do you believe that he'll do that, or will he just outbox him?
I think you've touched that on terms of your prediction and both of us in terms of our breakdown of the fight. I do think Fury is capable of knocking out Deontay Wilder, of course. He's a 19-stone man. of course, he's capable of knocking him out. Do I think he'll knock him out? No, I don't. I think if Fury wins, he wins on points.
I agree, but I also think that it might be a bit of a diversionary tactic. So Muhammad Ali famously, the Rumble in the Jungle, said, he chanted at press conferences, I'm going to dance, I'm going to dance, I'm going to dance. And then he got in the ring, he led on the ropes, and George Foreman then didn't have a game plan. His entire game plan was based on cutting off the ring and finding Ali. And then Ali went and stood there. And I think if Fury can get Wilder to play into, he's going to stand and trade, and then he gets back on his bike, I think that might be a bit of a diversionary tactic. But yeah, again, I agree with you. I don't think he'll try and stand and knock him out.
Yeah.
Right, so the next one was from All Boxing at All Boxing 4. And he put, what's the top 3 fights you want to see this year outside of the heavyweight division, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting spin on things, because I think it's always easier to look at the heavyweight division, be the glamorous division. It is 3 top fights for 2020. I think one that I was always interested in seeing on a domestic level, and it's one that will be part of a SimBoxx article going forward in terms of our team predicting what they want to see in 2020, is Liam Williams against Chris Eubank Jr. I think that's a great fight to see at middleweight. So that would certainly be in there. I think an easy fight to pick is Errol Spence Jr. against Terence Crawford at welterweight. See who the number 147 pounder on the planet is. And my third fight I want to see most in 2020 would be the rematch between Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor. No, I'm joking. That wouldn't be one of the fights. I think I'd go down at the lower weights. I think I'd love to see who we got at the lower weights. Anything with Tank Davis. I want to see Tank Davis in a real meaningful fight. Give me Tank Davis against Devin Haney, or Tank Davis against the winner of Lomachenko Lopez. I think that would complete my set.
I like that. The ones I went for were Josh Taylor, Jose Ramirez for unification at 140, which I think would be an absolute brilliant clash of styles. Navarrete versus Akhmed Aliyev, the new Uzbek champion, who's just equalled Leon Spinks' record, beating Danny Roman. That's another one, really exciting one. Navarrete fights on the undercard of Wilder Fury this weekend. Brilliant fight, that one. And the last one was Inoue versus Rigondeaux, Guillermo Rigondeaux. I think that's an absolute barnstormer if Inoue can get through Casemiro. They won my 3. But again, lower weight classes, but some absolutely quality fights.
Definitely.
So the next question was from Daniel Allen. He put, who do you think Canelo should fight next?
Callum Smith. There's no other way around it. I want to see Canelo against Callum Smith.
That's exactly the same answer as I've got. Callum Smith, and then I think Callum Smith's got the best chance of beating him, and I think it's the best fight.
Yeah, I agree that Callum Smith does possess the skills better than anybody else to give Canelo the most problems. Although I don't think Canelo's losing anytime soon, no matter who he fights.
Yeah, and then the next question was Dan at UK Fight Night again, but I put these together because it leads on. How much should Billy Joe Saunders or Callum Smith accept for a Canelo fight? My answer was, I don't care, I just want to see the fight, but I think it's hard for them to accept, the rumoured £750,000 when Danny Jacobs took home $2.5 million.
Yeah, I think there's got to be some sort of perspective of how much they've earned up until this point, and that's got to be mirrored against what they believe they're worth, not just because what they're worth at the minute, but because they're fighting Canelo. Does that add an extra zero onto then on the end of the amount of what they usually ask for a fight? And I think there's got to be like a middle ground. I think if the rumours are true of a sub £1 million purse for either of those guys is laughable. But yeah, in the main, I don't like to discuss too much about what fighters are paid, but they must obviously be paid properly. But I'd just love to see either of those guys get the fight with Canelo.
Yeah, and then the next one's from Sean Bastow, our friends over at BTR Boxing. Sean asks, out of the 38 heavyweight title fights in history that have involved a US and a UK fighter, which one stands out the most? Brilliant question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And to be honest, just because it's like most recent in terms of such a huge fight, in terms of a clash of styles, a clash of personalities, and a clash of 2 huge legendary boxers that are rightfully part of the Hall of Fame. Lennox Lewis against Mike Tyson, for me, stands out. Although I think it happened at the wrong time, it screams out at me all the time.
I agree. That's the biggest one that jumps off the page. There's that and Bruno McCall are the two that jump off the page. But I'm going to go for a weird hipster pick, as always. I'm going to go for Gentleman Jim Corbett versus Bob Fitzsimmons in 1897. So the gloved era had only just begun. John L. Sullivan was the heavyweight champion of the world, and Gentleman Jim Corbett knocked him out. And then his first challenge was Bob Fitzsimmons, who was a British middleweight. You wouldn't believe it now, but he jumped up to heavyweight, and then Fitzsimmons was a huge underdog. And then he absolutely ran through Corbett. He hit him with a body shot, which supposedly he heard the ribs crack from ringside because the gloves were only a thin coat of leather back then. And, you know, Fitzsimmons came on a boat over to America from Britain to fight there, you know, the young Cornish lad. And, it broke the ribs of the heavyweight champion. And then and he became the only British heavyweight champion for 95 years until Lennox Lewis came around. It was, it was a big, big upset at the time. And it was, it was the talk of America back in the day that a Brit had come over on the boat and knocked out their best fighter. So I'll pick that one, even though it's a bit out of the way.
No, definitely a great shout. As always, Ewan, it's great to have you on board with your boxing knowledge. You're a valued member of the team as our boxing historian. So, it's good that you've chose a fight quite obscure. It's easy for me to sit here and pick such a recent bout. But yeah, there's so many great fights over the years. I think that could even be a topic for Sean Bastow and the guys over at the BTR Boxing Podcast to divulge into and look at some of those great American versus British heavyweight fights.
Yeah, it's a brilliant one. So the next questions were from Tom at UK Fight Night, and he put he did 3 different questions. One of them is rather silly, but first one is, do you think Haney fights Garcia this year? Devin Haney, Mikey Garcia. I just said no, but I'd love to see it. I think it's a great fight, but I think there's absolutely no chance of it happening.
Yeah, I echo that 100%. I think those two guys are going to be the front runners in terms of boxing on the world stage. I think the two young, good-looking, athletic, supremely talented fighters. I'm not a fan of putting fights off, but in this instance, I could kind of agree.
And the other question was, do you think that Warrington moving to Matchroom is beneficial for the Stevenson fight happening, or will he end up fighting Kanju?
I think it's definitely beneficial to Josh Warrington and gives us more hope for the Stevenson fight happening, simply for the fact that Matchroom would be more likely to offer a better purse overall for the fight to happen. More money on this side than there was previously for Warrington on the other side. So yeah, in a word, yeah, I do believe there's more hope for the fight.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's more likely, but actually, personally, I think Kanju's a better fight. They have ridiculous output. The pair of them throw over 100 punches around. It's ridiculous. I think the Kanju fight would be an absolute war. And I know that's probably not a popular opinion because it's not a unification, but personally, I like the Kanju fight the most for Warrington.
Yeah, I think just because of the fact that Kanju is a bit more of an obscure fighter, and might not have the trash talking and the bravado of Shakur Stevenson, I don't want that to hold back from a potential Kanju and Josh Warrington fight at some point. But I would like to see a unification fight for Josh Warrington, simply for the fact that I think he deserves it.
I agree. Yeah, and his final question was about Fury's various different sexual habits and how they're going to affect his performance, but I don't think that one really needs answering.
Yeah, I don't think we're in a position to question Tyson Fury's male fortitude and how that might affect the fight. I think there'll be the other moments in the fight that will give us a more definitive answer to why he may or may not win this fight.
So yeah, Johnny Townsend asked the 4 great 135-pound fighters from the USA, Tank Davis, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, and Teofimo Lopez, who wins in a round robin and who has the most potential.
Oh, now this is something that changes so often for me, so I'm going to give you my thoughts as of right now. The best of the 4, and the one that's got the brightest future is Devin Haney. I love everything about him. His style, his boxing ability, his power, the fact that he's going to go up in weight, but he still seems to make 135 pounds reasonably comfortable. But I can't take away from any of the fighters. If you'd asked me 3 months ago, I would have said Teofimo Lopez. If you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said Tank Davis, and Tank Davis for a very long time. But yeah, that's it. I think we'll have a podcast at some point in the future based on the 135-pound division, because there's so much that I'd like to say about that division. Arguably, the division is the hottest in the sport at the minute.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it is the hottest division in the sport. I think it's really, really competitive. I think 135 pounds on fire. I agree with. I think I have two different answers because I think Haney has the most potential because he's so young. Yeah. I agree with everything you said about Devin Haney. I think he's got a long way to go in the sport. But right now, I think the best one of the four is Teofimo Lopez. I think he's peaking now in a way that, you know, Devin Haney will in 3 or 4 years. In a round robin, if it all happened tomorrow, I'd pick Lopez. But I think Haney's probably got a brighter future. That's my answer. Okay. And the next one was from Greg, GND 1989, the predictor over at Eat Sleep Box and Repeat. And he's put, is Hennessy Sports signing Isaac Chamberlain a sign of intent that he plans on building a respectable stable again on Channel 5?
Good question. Special mention to Greg. I think Greg's a great guy and he does some great work over at Eat Sleep Box and Repeat along with the rest of the team. I think they're a great bunch over there. I think it's a great signing for Hennessy Sports. I think Isaac Chamberlain, although he didn't perform to his full potential against Lonzo Cola, I still think there's a good fighter in there, and I think it's a clever move for him if he's going to be active to be on terrestrial TV and get broadcast to as big an audience as possible. So I think at the minute, I think it works hand in hand, great for fighter and promoter, and yes, I do think it's a signing with intent.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I really hope so as well, because, terrestrial TV fights are brilliant for the sport. They get more eyeballs on boxing in a bigger way than flipping YouTubers or anything like that. I think that Mick Hennessy putting fights on terrestrial TV are amazing. And I will always root for Mick Hennessy because he was so nice to me. When I turned up to cover my first fight as Hugh Fury versus Chris Norad in Manchester, my first fight covering for SimBoxx, I had no idea what I was doing, and Mick Hennessy personally took me around some of them and gave me fighters to interview and stuff. He was so hospitable. I'll always root for Mick Hennessy and everything he does because he's genuinely one of the nicest fellas I've met in boxing.
Yeah, fantastic. It's good to hear. And I'm in the same boat. I think Mick Hennessy's a great guy. He's an honest guy, and he seems to keep boxing traditions close to his heart. So yeah, I agree with you there.
Absolutely. And then our final question was, it's a really big one, but I thought I'd put it in at the end because it's so exciting. It's from Boxing Fan, but a 0 instead of an O. And he put top 5 fantasy fights of all time. Doesn't include the obvious Ali Tyson. It's a hard one, but I came up with a couple as I was driving home.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I think that it's a question that is, I think that's worthy of an episode of Let's Talk Boxing moving forward. And I think I'll respectfully decline to answer on the fact that I think this could be an episode moving forward, and we'll give a special mention for that question at that point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a great episode in its own right. But just to be nice, I'll say Henry Armstrong versus Roberto Duran at lightweight. There you go. That's one of the ones that I'd love to see. Yeah. Right. Well, thank you, Luke. Anyway.
Yeah, no, thanks for your time, Ewan. I think, just before we finish, I think, I just want to give a special mention to our team at SimBoxx. I think moving into 2020, we've got an established team now with yourself. You can be found at Rebel Boxing on Twitter. We've got Bobby Gunn, we've got Aaron Ludford, Ben John, Sean Nomoyle. That's our British contingent. We're bringing out some quality content, regular quality content. Covering all different aspects of the sport in the UK. And then also we've got Jason Peters and Alex Pearl out in the US. I think the rate at which SimBoxx is growing is a reflection of the work that us as a team are putting in. It's great that we've got stateside correspondents, and it's a really exciting time to be part of SimBoxx. And really proud to see the way it's growing, and long may that continue with a great team.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So thanks for your time, Ewan. Roll on for
Thank you.
Second. It's going to be the biggest heavyweight fight of our generation so far, and it promises to be dramatic.
Yeah, if nothing else, it will be dramatic.